The stars around the galactic core had been peaceful for 3,000 years. In the center of everything, where millions of stars clustered together like jewels in a crown, the great space station Nexus Prime floated in perfect harmony. It was home to 12 different alien species who had learned long ago that war was pointless, and cooperation was the key to survival. Admiral Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Harmony. His blue-scaled skin shimmered under the soft lights as he watched the peaceful traffic of ships moving between the core worlds. The Veltar Admiral had commanded the core defense fleet for over 50 years, though he had never seen real combat. No one had. The galaxy had evolved beyond such primitive behavior. The defense fleet was more for show than actual protection. Their ships were beautiful things made of living crystal that grew rather than being built. They gleamed like diamonds in space, powered by dark matter engines that hummed with gentle music. Each vessel was a work of art, designed to inspire awe rather than fear. After all, what civilized species would ever attack another? Admiral called out his communications officer, a tall being from the Thys race with 4 arms and silver eyes. "We're receiving some unusual readings from the long-range sensors." Zethkar moved to the sensor station with the flowing grace typical of his people. The displays showed the familiar patterns of core space traffic, but something was different. At the very edge of their detection range, 12 objects were moving toward them from the outer rim of the galaxy. "What kind of objects?" he asked, his voice carrying the musical tones of the Veltar language that had been translated into standard galactic speech. "Unknown, sir. They're large, approximately 3 kilometers in length each. But they're not broadcasting any identification, signals, and they don't match any known ship designs in our databases." Zethkar studied the readings with growing curiosity rather than concern. In his experience, unknown objects were usually ancient artifacts left over from extinct civilizations, or perhaps young species making their first tentative steps into galactic society. The hegemony had protocols for both situations. "What's their speed and trajectory?" he asked. The sensor operator, a crystalline being whose body chimed softly as she worked, ran her fingers across the control surface. "They're moving at incredible velocity, sir. Much faster than our fastest ships, but they're decelerating in a controlled manner, suggesting intelligent guidance. Their trajectory will bring them directly to the core systems." "Fascinating," Zethkar murmured. "Have you attempted communication?" "Yes, sir. Standard first contact protocols on all frequencies. No response yet." The Admiral nodded thoughtfully. This wasn't unusual. Many species were cautious during first contact, preferring to observe before making themselves known. The hegemony had learned patience over the centuries. They would wait and watch, ready to welcome these newcomers with open arms once they felt safe enough to communicate. Hours passed, as the objects continued their approach. Zethkar had sent word to Nexus Prime, and the Council of 12 was already preparing for what they assumed would be another peaceful first contact. Dr. Shinra, the hegemony's chief xenobiologist, was on her way to observe the proceedings. She had overseen the integration of 47 different species into galactic society and was considered the expert on helping primitive civilizations evolve beyond their warlike phases. "Admiral," the communications officer called again, "the objects have just crossed into our outer detection grid. We're getting much clearer readings now." Zethkar returned to the sensor station. The new data was puzzling. The objects were definitely artificial, clearly manufactured rather than grown, or naturally formed. But their design was unlike anything in the hegemony databases. Where galactic ships were elegant curves and flowing lines, these objects were angular and harsh. They looked almost aggressive. "Computer, analyze the design patterns and compare with known evolutionary trends," Zethkar ordered. The ship's artificial intelligence, a collective consciousness shared by all hegemony vessels, responded in its calm, melodic voice. "Analysis complete. The design patterns suggest a species still in its primitive militaristic phase. Heavy armor plating, multiple weapon emplacements, and redundant defensive systems. Probability assessment indicates a pre-Enlightenment civilization that has somehow achieved advanced space travel." This was concerning, though not unprecedented. Occasionally, species developed technology faster than wisdom. The hegemony had encountered such civilizations before and had always been able to guide them toward peaceful evolution. It just required patience and understanding. Summon the council, Zethkar ordered. We may be dealing with a situation that requires delicate handling. Within hours, representatives from all 12 hegemony species had gathered in the council. Chambers aboard Nexus Prime. The great circular room floated in transparent walls that offered a view of the surrounding star cluster. Each species had evolved differently, but all had reached the same conclusion. Cooperation and peace were the highest forms of civilization. Dr. Shinra, a graceful being from the Elith race with flowing tentacles instead of arms, presented her analysis to the assembled council. Her people were known for their exceptional ability to understand the minds of other species. Based on the sensor data, she explained, her voice carrying the subtle harmonics that made Elith speech so soothing. We are dealing with a species that appears to be in transition. Their technology is remarkably advanced, possibly even superior to our own in some areas. However, their design philosophy suggests they have not yet evolved beyond the primitive concept of conflict. Council Leader Vorth, the eldest member representing the ancient Kethani race, leaned forward on his floating platform. His species had been the first to achieve true enlightenment, abandoning warfare over 5,000 years ago. What do you recommend, Doctor? He asked in his deep, resonant voice. Standard integration protocols, but with additional caution, Shinra replied. We must be patient and understanding. This species may be on the verge of evolutionary breakthrough. Our contact with them could be the catalyst that helps them abandon their primitive ways and join galactic civilization. The council murmured their agreement. They had seen this pattern many times before. Young species, still trapped in the cycle of conflict and competition, eventually learned that cooperation was more beneficial than warfare. It was simply a matter of showing them a better way. As the council deliberated, the mysterious objects continued their approach. They had now entered. The outer core systems and their deceleration patterns showed remarkable precision. Whatever species controlled these vessels clearly possessed advanced mathematics and engineering skills. Admiral Zethkar had positioned his fleet in a welcoming formation, spacing his ships to create a corridor that would guide the newcomers toward Nexus Prime. It was a gesture of trust and openness, showing that the hegemony had nothing to hide and nothing to fear. Admiral, his sensor officer reported, the objects have just entered the inner core zone. We're now detecting energy, signatures unlike anything in our databases. Their power output is extraordinary. Zethkar studied the readings with growing amazement. These ships were generating more power than entire hegemony battle groups. If this energy could be harnessed for peaceful purposes, these newcomers could revolutionize galactic civilization. Continue attempts at communication, he ordered. Use the standard mathematical sequences to show our peaceful intentions. They must understand that we wish them no harm. The hegemony's most advanced communication arrays sent out carefully crafted messages designed to demonstrate intelligence, peaceful intent, and desire for contact. The messages included mathematical constants, stellar maps, and cultural exchanges that had proven successful with other species. For the first time in hours, there was a response. The signal was brief, powerful, and unlike anything the hegemony had ever received. It cut through their communication frequencies with surgical precision and delivered a message in perfect galactic standard language. This is humanity's first expeditionary fleet. We have come to establish our presence in the galactic core. Stand down your vessels and prepare for territorial negotiations. The bridge of the eternal harmony fell silent. Every member of Zethkar's crew stared at their instruments in shock. The message was impossible on multiple levels. No species learned galactic standard without prior contact. No species talked about territorial negotiations instead of peaceful integration. And no species referred to themselves as an expeditionary fleet unless they were planning conquest. Admiral Zethkar felt a chill run down his spine as he realized that everything the hegemony believed about intelligent evolution might be wrong. These humans, whoever they were, had developed technology that rivaled their own while remaining locked in primitive patterns of territorial expansion and military thinking. For the first time in 3,000 years, the galactic core faced the prospect of actual war. The human response changed everything the hegemony thought they knew about intelligent life in the galaxy. Admiral Zethkar stared at his communication display, reading the message over and over again. The words made no sense in the context of civilized first contact, territorial negotiations. The phrase felt alien in his mind. The hegemony had not engaged in territorial disputes for millennia. Space was vast, resources were abundant through proper technology, and intelligent species naturally evolved toward sharing rather than claiming. "Sir," his communications officer said nervously, "they're requesting detailed scans of our fleet composition and defensive capabilities." "Requesting?" Zethkar asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "No, sir. Demanding. They say it's standard procedure for what they call pre-engagement assessment." Dr. Shinra arrived on the bridge within minutes of receiving Zethkar's emergency summons. Her flowing tentacles moved rapidly across portable analysis equipment as she studied the human transmission patterns. "This is unprecedented," she murmured, her harmonious voice tight with concern. "Their communication technology is incredibly sophisticated. They're not just speaking galactic standard, they're using it perfectly, including cultural nuances and diplomatic protocols. But they're applying these protocols in ways that suggest a completely different understanding of interspecies relations." The main display shifted to show visual images of the approaching human fleet. What they saw made every being on the bridge fall silent. The 12 human vessels were unlike anything in galactic history. Where hegemony ships were art, these were pure function. Every line, every surface, every visible component served a purpose related to warfare. The ships were massive, over 3 kilometers long, but they moved with surprising grace. Their hulls were dark gray metal covered in angular protrusions that could only be weapon systems. Instead of the gentle curves favored by civilized species, these vessels looked like they had been designed by someone who understood violence on a fundamental level. "Computer, analyze the visible weapon systems," Zethkar ordered. The ship's AI processed the images for several minutes before responding. "Analysis incomplete. The visible systems do not match any known weapon types in galactic databases. However, energy signature analysis suggests that these vessels carry enough firepower to destroy entire star systems." Dr. Shinra's tentacles went rigid with shock. "That's impossible. No species develops that kind of destructive capability unless they're planning to use it. But any species intelligent enough to build such weapons should have evolved beyond the need for them." A new transmission came from the human fleet. This time it included visual communication. The main screen showed the interior of what was obviously a military command center. Everything was metal and sharp angles with displays showing tactical information and weapon status indicators. At the center stood a human female in what could only be a military uniform. "I am Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Nations Space Command," she said. Her voice was calm and professional, but there was something in her eyes that made Zethkar deeply uncomfortable. "I am speaking for humanity's first expeditionary fleet. We are here to establish human sovereignty over core systems and negotiate territorial boundaries with existing local powers." She paused, and her image seemed to look directly at Zethkar through the screen. "You have one of your time periods equivalent to 6 hours to respond with details of your military capabilities, territorial claims, and political structure. This information will help us determine the most efficient path to peaceful coexistence." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "Did she just?" the communications officer began. "Give us an ultimatum," Zethkar finished. "Yes, she did." Dr. Shinra was working frantically with her analysis equipment. "Admiral, I'm detecting something that should be impossible. The human vessels are scanning us with technologies I don't recognize. They're somehow mapping our ship designs, analyzing our power systems, and collecting detailed information about our capabilities. But they're doing it through our own shields, as if the shields don't exist." More data flowed in from the hegemony's sensor networks throughout the core systems. The human fleet had split into smaller formations with individual ships taking positions at key strategic points. They weren't just visiting. They were deploying for control of the entire region. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "they've positioned themselves to control all major hyperspace routes in and out of the core. Any ship trying to leave the region would have to pass within range of their weapons." Admiral Zethkar had commanded peaceful operations for 50 years, but his species retained genetic memories of their pre-Enlightenment period. Some primitive part of his mind recognized what he was seeing: a perfectly executed military occupation. "Send a priority transmission to Nexus Prime," he ordered. "The Council needs to see this immediately." Within hours, emergency sessions were being held across the hegemony. Leaders who had spent their entire lives focused on art, science, and philosophy were suddenly forced to think about concepts they thought had been abandoned forever: military strategy, territorial control, and the possibility of actual warfare. The human fleet continued its systematic deployment while the hegemony struggled to understand what was happening. More detailed scans revealed the true scope of the problem. Each human vessel carried enough firepower to defeat the entire core defense fleet. But more terrifying than their weapons was their behavior. The humans weren't acting like aggressive primitives. They were calm, methodical, and clearly following a detailed plan. Their communications were polite but firm. They answered questions about their intentions with military precision, and they demonstrated an understanding of galactic politics that suggested they had been studying the hegemony for a very long time. "They know everything about us," Dr. Shinra reported to the emergency council session. "Their questions reveal detailed knowledge of our ship designs, our government structure, even our economic systems. This isn't first contact. They've been watching us for years, possibly decades." Council Leader Vorth struggled to comprehend the implications. "But how is that possible? Our sensor networks would have detected any observation posts or spy vessels." "Not necessarily," came a new voice. Commander Thrix of the Hegemony's Scientific Research Division had been analyzing the human technology. "These humans appear to have developed stealth capabilities far beyond our detection systems. They could have been observing us for generations, without our knowledge." The revelation sent shockwaves through the council. Everything they believed about their security, their knowledge of galactic affairs, and their technological superiority was suddenly in question. Another transmission arrived from Admiral Chen. This time she was standing in what appeared to be a tactical briefing room. Behind her, large displays showed detailed maps of the galactic core with human ships marked in positions of strategic control. "We understand that our presence may be concerning to local governments," she said. "Humanity has no desire for unnecessary conflict. However, we also cannot allow our expansion to be hindered by outdated political structures." She gestured to the displays behind her. "We have analyzed your capabilities and determined that direct military resistance would result in significant casualties on your side with minimal impact on our operations. We therefore propose a negotiated settlement that recognizes legitimate human territorial claims while preserving your cultural autonomy in designated regions." The transmission paused while Admiral Chen consulted a data pad. "You have 48 hours to begin formal negotiations. During this time, our fleet will maintain current positions. Any attempt to reinforce your military assets or call for outside assistance will be considered a hostile act." Again, the transmission ended abruptly, leaving the hegemony leadership in shock. "They're not just threatening us," realized Dr. Shinra. "They're offering us terms for surrender. They've already decided they're going to take control. They're just being polite about it." Admiral Zethkar found himself in the impossible position of commanding a defense fleet against an enemy that had already demonstrated their superiority. His beautiful crystal ships, designed for ceremony and peaceful patrol, were facing vessels built for one purpose: winning wars. "What do we know about human psychology?" he asked Dr. Shinra. She consulted her rapidly growing files on the newcomers. "They appear to be a remarkable species. Individually intelligent, capable of complex cooperation, technologically advanced, and completely unified in their military objectives. But Admiral, They think differently than any species we've encountered. They don't see warfare as a failure of civilization. They see it as a tool for expanding civilization. Is negotiation possible? I believe so, but not on terms we would recognize as fair. They appear to be offering us a choice. Submit to their authority voluntarily, or be forced to submit after they demonstrate their military superiority. Admiral Zethkar looked out at the stars that had been peaceful for 3,000 years. For the first time in galactic history, that peace was about to be shattered by a species that had weaponized everything, including diplomacy. The age of hegemony supremacy was ending, and the age of human expansion was about to begin. Whether it would be a peaceful transition or a violent one, Deep Admiral Zethkar had never given a combat order in his 50 years of service. The words felt strange in his mouth as he spoke them to his fleet commanders. All ships, battle formation Delta. Prepare harmonic resonance weapons for demonstration firing. The hegemony had decided to show these humans the futility of military aggression. 200 ships of the core defense fleet moved into position around the 12 human vessels. It was an overwhelming display of force that should convince any rational species to reconsider their aggressive stance. The hegemony ships were beautiful even in battle formation. Their crystalline hulls caught and reflected the light from nearby stars, creating patterns of rainbow colors across space. They moved with grace and precision, each ship's position perfectly calculated to maximize the effectiveness of their harmonic weapons, while minimizing any possible damage to the humans. Admiral, his weapons officer reported. All ships report. Ready. Harmonic resonance at full power. The harmonic resonance weapons were the pinnacle of hegemony military technology. They generated carefully tuned vibration frequencies that could shake apart the molecular bonds holding any ship together. They were designed to disable rather than destroy, allowing for the capture and rehabilitation of aggressive species. Human vessels. Zethkar broadcast on all frequencies. You are surrounded and outnumbered. Our weapons are targeted on your ships. Stand down immediately and prepare to be escorted to diplomatic facilities where we can resolve this situation peacefully. The response from Admiral Chen was immediate and chilling. Admiral Zethkar, we appreciate your concern for peaceful resolution. However, your current actions constitute a threat to human ships and personnel. You have 30 seconds to withdraw to a safe distance before we respond in kind. They're bluffing, Zethkar's tactical officer said. 12 ships against 200? Even with their advanced technology, the odds are impossible. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication system again, calm and professional. 20 seconds, Admiral. I strongly recommend you reconsider your current course of action. Zethkar felt the weight of 3,000 years of galactic peace on his shoulders. No civilized species had ever refused to back down when faced with overwhelming force. The very concept of actually fighting when outnumbered was considered a sign of mental illness by galactic standards. 10 seconds, Admiral Chen announced. Admiral? Dr. Shinra's voice came over the communication system from Nexus Prime. Perhaps we should... Time's up, Admiral Chen said simply. What happened next changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. The UNS Retribution. Admiral Chen's flagship fired a single weapon. There was no dramatic energy beam, no explosive missile, no visible projectile of any kind. Space simply changed around 3 of the hegemony's closest ships. One moment, the crystal vessels were there, their harmonic weapons charging to full power. The next moment they were gone. Not destroyed, not damaged, gone. In their place were 3 perfectly spherical voids in space, each exactly 50 meters in diameter. The missing ships hadn't been vaporized or scattered. They had simply ceased to exist. Impossible, whispered the weapons officer. Our sensors show no energy discharge, no projectile, nothing. How did they? All ships emergency retreat, Zethkar ordered, his voice cracking with shock. Fall back to defensive perimeter 7. But the human response was already underway. The 12 human ships moved with coordination that defied belief. They didn't accelerate like normal vessels. They seemed to step through space, appearing in new positions without traveling the distance between. The UNS Prometheus demonstrated the next impossible technology. It fired something that Admiral Chen's calm voice identified as a gravity lance. The weapon reached out across thousands of kilometers and grabbed one of the retreating hegemony ships, pulling it back toward the human formation, despite the ship's engines running at full power. In the opposite direction, "Admiral," the captured ship's captain broadcast. "Our engines are at maximum output, but we're being pulled backward. The gravitational force is localized to our ship only. It's not affecting anything else." Dr. Shinra's voice cut through the chaos from her monitoring station. "Admiral, they're not just using advanced technology. They're breaking the fundamental laws of physics as we understand them. Localized gravity manipulation, matter displacement, selective space-time alteration. These aren't weapons. They're proof that human science operates on principles we don't even recognize." The demonstration continued with terrifying precision. The UNS Defiance showed off something called quantum phasing ammunition that passed through hegemony shields as if they didn't exist before exploding inside the protected areas. The UNS Victory demonstrated adaptive frequency modulation that adjusted its energy weapons in real time to counter any defensive measures. But the most horrifying display came from the UNS Prometheus. Admiral Chen's voice announced calmly, "Stellar manipulation test firing." The human ship aimed something at the nearby star that provided light and energy to this section of the core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the star flared. A controlled solar explosion sent a wave of plasma racing outward in a carefully shaped pattern. The plasma wave reached the hegemony fleet in minutes, but instead of destroying the ships, it flowed around them in precise patterns that disabled their engines, weapons, and life support systems without harming the crews. Half the core defense fleet found themselves drifting helplessly in space, completely at the mercy of the humans who had just demonstrated the ability to weaponize an entire star. "Admiral Zethkar," Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication system, still perfectly calm and professional. "I believe this demonstration has shown the futility of military resistance. Are you prepared to discuss terms for peaceful coexistence?" Zethkar stared at his instruments in shock. In less than 10 minutes, the humans had neutralized the most powerful military force in galactic history without killing a single person. They had demonstrated technology that was literally beyond the hegemony's ability to understand, much less counter. "How?" he whispered. "Admiral," his science officer reported, "I'm analyzing the weapons they used. The quantum tunnel bore that. Eliminated our ships, created localized space-time rifts. The gravity lance generates artificial gravitational fields that can be projected across interstellar distances. And the stellar manipulation device. Admiral, they're controlling fusion reactions inside a star from thousands of kilometers away." Dr. Shinra's analysis was even more disturbing. "Admiral, these humans haven't just developed advanced weapons. They've weaponized the fundamental forces of the universe. They're using gravity, electromagnetism, nuclear forces, and space-time itself as tools of war." The implications were staggering. The hegemony had believed that any species advanced enough to manipulate such forces would naturally evolve beyond the need for conflict. But the humans had apparently developed godlike technological capabilities while retaining the strategic mindset of warriors. "Admiral Zethkar," Admiral Chen called again. "Your ships are disabled, but your crews are unharmed. This was a demonstration of capability, not intent to cause casualties. However, my mission parameters require that I establish human control over this region. Would you prefer to discuss terms now, or shall we proceed with a more comprehensive demonstration?" The Admiral looked around his bridge at his crew's shocked faces. The beautiful crystal ship that had been his pride and joy was dead in space, its harmonic weapons utterly useless against technology that operated on principles beyond their understanding. "What terms?" he asked quietly. "Territorial concessions, recognizing human sovereignty over strategic star systems, establishment of human bases for future expansion operations, and integration of local military forces under human command for regional security," Admiral Chen replied immediately. "In exchange, we guarantee the safety and cultural autonomy of all existing populations, access to human medical and technological advances, and protection against external threats. And if we refuse, then we will be forced to establish control through less diplomatic means." Admiral, I want to be very clear about something. Humanity doesn't seek the destruction of your civilizations. We respect your achievements and your cultures, but we will not allow outdated political structures to interfere with human expansion. Admiral Chen paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a note of what might have been genuine regret. We have studied your species for decades. We know you are intelligent, peaceful, and accomplished. But your evolutionary path has left you defenseless against species like us who chose a different development strategy. We're offering you protection in exchange for acknowledgement of political reality. Dr. Shinra's voice came over the communication system from Nexus Prime. Admiral, the Council is requesting an immediate ceasefire for emergency deliberations. Admiral Zethkar looked out at his disabled fleet, then at the human ships that had demonstrated casual mastery over forces that the hegemony considered fundamental constants of nature. Ceasefire granted, he said quietly. All ships stand down. Prepare for negotiations. For the first time in galactic history, a civilized military force had been defeated not through superior numbers or resources, but through technology so advanced it might as well have been magic. The humans had proven that they could destroy the entire hegemony whenever they chose to do so. The only question now was whether the galaxy's peaceful species would accept human protection, or whether they would choose to resist and face the consequences of opposing a species that had turned war itself into a science. Dr. Shinra had studied first contact procedures for over 2 centuries, but nothing had prepared her for walking aboard a human warship. The UNS Retribution's docking bay was a vast metal cavern filled with military equipment she couldn't identify. Human personnel moved with efficient purpose, their uniforms crisp and their movements precise. Everything was angular, functional, and designed for war. Even the air itself felt different, recycled through systems that prioritized efficiency over comfort. There were no decorative elements, no art, no signs of the cultural expression that marked every civilized species. This was a machine for conquest, and everyone aboard it was part of that machine. Dr. Shinra, Admiral Chen greeted her personally at the airlock. The human leader was smaller than expected, but her presence filled the space around her. Welcome aboard. I apologize for the utilitarian surroundings, but this is a military vessel designed for extended operations in hostile territory. Hostile territory? Dr. Shinra asked as they walked through corridors lined with what could only be weapon storage compartments. Any territory not under human control is potentially hostile, Admiral Chen replied matter-of-factly. That's basic strategic doctrine. We prepare for the worst-case scenario and hope for the best-case outcome. They entered what Admiral Chen called the strategic briefing room. The walls were covered with displays showing detailed maps of the HFY Galactic core, complete with tactical assessments of every hegemony installation, shipping route, and defensive position. The level of detail was staggering. How long have you been watching us? Dr. Shinra asked. Continuous observation for 47 years, Admiral Chen replied without hesitation. Preliminary scouting for approximately 90 years before that. We've been very thorough. Dr. Shinra felt her tentacles curl in shock. 90 years? But that's impossible. Our sensor networks would have detected any observation posts. Admiral Chen gestured to one of the displays, which showed a 3-dimensional map of hegemony space, with dozens of small markers scattered throughout. These represent our observation platforms. They're quantum phase constructs that exist slightly outside normal spacetime, completely undetectable by any technology based on electromagnetic or gravitational sensors. The casual way Admiral Chen discussed technology that violated fundamental physical laws was deeply disturbing. Why? Dr. Shinra asked. Why did you spend so much effort studying us before making contact? Because ignorance leads to mistakes, and mistakes in interstellar relations lead to extinctions, Admiral Chen replied. She activated another display showing historical data. Humanity has studied the evolutionary patterns of over 3,000 intelligent species. We've identified several recurring patterns that determine survival versus extinction. The display showed complex charts and graphs that hurt Dr. Shinra's head to look at. Species that evolve toward pure pacifism and cooperation develop advanced arts, sciences, and philosophy. They create peaceful, stable civilizations that can last for millennia. but they also become evolutionary dead ends. Dead ends? Dr. Shinra protested. We've achieved peace, prosperity, and scientific advancement beyond anything your species has accomplished. Yes, Admiral Chen agreed. And when a truly hostile force arrives, you have no defense against it. Your evolutionary path has eliminated the very traits needed for survival in a universe that doesn't care about your good intentions. She activated another display showing galactic maps spanning thousands of years. We've found the remains of 47 civilizations like yours. Peaceful, advanced, completely unprepared for contact with species that hadn't abandoned warfare as a survival tool. Every single one was conquered or exterminated within decades of first contact with aggressive neighbors. Dr. Shinra stared at the data in growing horror. You're saying that our evolution toward peace has made us vulnerable? I'm saying that your evolution toward peace has made you dependent on the universe remaining peaceful, Admiral Chen corrected. Unfortunately, the universe doesn't cooperate with peaceful intentions. There are forces out there that make humanity look benevolent by comparison. Admiral Chen brought up another set of displays showing deep space survey data. Beyond the galactic rim, we've detected signals from entities that appear to consume entire star systems for energy. In the galactic south, there are machine intelligences that convert all organic matter into computational substrate. And in the core regions beyond your territory, we've found evidence of something that seems to collect intelligent species for purposes we haven't been able to determine. The room fell silent as Dr. Shinra processed this information. You're claiming that these threats justify your invasion of our territory? I'm explaining that our expansion isn't motivated by greed or aggression, Admiral Chen replied. It's motivated by the mathematical certainty that isolated civilizations don't survive long-term contact with hostile forces. We're offering you a choice: integration with a species capable of protecting you, or eventual extinction when something worse than us arrives. Dr. Shinra's tentacles trembled with emotion. But you're asking us to give up everything that makes us who we are: our independence, our sovereignty, our right to determine our own future. No, Admiral Chen said firmly. We're asking you to acknowledge reality. Your independence is an illusion that exists only because truly hostile forces haven't found you yet. Your sovereignty only extends as far as your ability to defend it, and your future will be determined by forces beyond your control unless you align with forces capable of controlling them. Admiral Chen stood and walked to a wall display showing the current positions of human and hegemony ships. Dr. Shinra, I want you to understand something very important. Humanity doesn't want to conquer your species. We want to preserve your species. Your arts, your sciences, your unique perspectives. These things have value that we recognize and respect. But your respect requires our submission. Our protection requires your cooperation, Admiral Chen corrected. There's a difference. We're not asking you to become human. We're asking you to accept human protection while maintaining your cultural identity. Dr. Shinra studied the human admiral's face, looking for signs of deception or hidden motives. What she found was worse than malice. She found genuine belief. Admiral Chen truly believed that human conquest was necessary for galactic survival. What happened to your species? Dr. Shinra asked quietly. What made you so certain that peace leads to extinction? Admiral Chen's expression darkened. We learned the hard way. Earth's history is full of peaceful civilizations that were conquered by aggressive neighbors. Species, nations, and cultures that chose cooperation over competition, peace over preparedness. Most of them no longer exist. She activated a new display showing Earth's historical data. We studied our own evolutionary patterns and realized that survival required maintaining the ability to fight, even when fighting seemed unnecessary. We chose a different path than yours. We weaponized everything we could while developing the wisdom to use those weapons responsibly. And you believe this gives you the right to impose your choices on others? I believe this gives us the responsibility to protect others from the consequences of their choices, Admiral Chen replied. Dr. Shinra, your species is remarkably advanced in many areas. Your understanding of quantum mechanics, your mastery of energy manipulation, your insights into consciousness and sentience. These discoveries could benefit all intelligent life. But only under human supervision? Under human protection, Admiral Chen insisted. We're not interested in micromanaging your research or controlling your development. We're interested in ensuring that your development continues instead of ending when the next hostile force arrives. Dr. Shinra realized that she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. A species that had developed godlike technological capabilities while retaining the strategic thinking of predators. The humans weren't evil. They were something far more dangerous. They were rational. "What are your terms?" she asked quietly. Admiral Chen activated a comprehensive display showing detailed proposals for integration. Territorial concessions for strategic military bases, joint research programs combining human and hegemony technologies, integration of military command, structures under human leadership and cultural autonomy for all civilian populations. And if we refuse? Then we establish control through military means and implement the same policies with less input from your governments, Admiral Chen replied without emotion. The outcome is the same, but the process is less pleasant for everyone involved. Dr. Shinra stared at the proposals, realizing that humanity had already planned for every possible response from the hegemony. Accept human protection voluntarily, or be forced to accept it after resistance proved futile. How long do we have to decide? The Council has until the end of this cycle to provide an answer, Admiral Chen said. After that, we proceed with implementation regardless of your preference. As Dr. Shinra prepared to return to Nexus Prime, Admiral Chen offered one final observation. Doctor, I know this is difficult for your people to accept, but consider this. We could have simply taken control without any negotiation at all. The fact that we're offering you choices proves that we value your civilizations and want to preserve them. Dr. Shinra left the UNS Retribution with the terrible knowledge that humanity's invasion wasn't motivated by cruelty or greed. It was motivated by a cold calculation that peaceful species needed protection from a universe that didn't share their values. The choice facing the hegemony wasn't between freedom and slavery. It was between survival under human protection and extinction from forces that would show no mercy at all. The vote split the hegemony exactly in half. 6 species, led by Admiral Zethkar's Veltar people, chose resistance. 6 others, influenced by Dr. Shinra's terrifying report from the human ship, reluctantly agreed to negotiate with the invaders. Council Leader Vorth spoke for the resistance faction. We cannot surrender 3,000 years of peaceful civilization to these militaristic humans, no matter how advanced their technology. If we submit now, we will never again control our own destiny. Dr. Shinra represented the cooperation faction. If we resist, we will have no destiny to control. I've seen their capabilities, studied their technology, and analyzed their strategic thinking. They are offering us survival. Refusing their offer means choosing extinction. The debate raged for hours in the great council chambers of Nexus Prime. Ancient species that had never considered the possibility of warfare were forced to make decisions about military resistance. The very concepts felt alien to beings who had evolved beyond conflict. Admiral Zethkar commanded the military forces of the resistance. His remaining ships had been repaired using emergency protocols that hadn't been activated in centuries. The crystal vessels gleamed in space around Nexus Prime, their harmonic weapons charged and ready. We have advantages they may not expect, he told his fellow commanders. This is our territory. We know every star, every gravitational anomaly, every piece of ancient technology left by previous civilizations. They may have superior weapons, but we have the home field advantage. The Resistance's plan was desperate, but theoretically sound. The galactic core contained massive stellar engineering projects left by an extinct civilization known as the Architects. These ancient machines had been used to stabilize the artificial star system that powered Nexus Prime, but they could also be weaponized. If we can activate the Architect systems, Admiral Zethkar explained to his staff, we can create a gravitational anomaly that will trap the human ships in a time dilation field. They'll be frozen in space-time while we develop countermeasures to their technology. It was a plan born of desperation, but it was their only chance. The hegemony had never used the architect systems as weapons, but their scientists had studied the massive constructs for centuries. In theory, the plan would work. Admiral Chen detected the hegemony's preparations within hours. Human sensor technology identified the power buildup around the ancient stellar engineering platforms long before the Resistance expected discovery. Interesting, she commented to her staff aboard the UNS Retribution. They're attempting to weaponize architect technology. Creative, but ultimately futile. Her tactical officer looked concerned. Admiral, our analysis suggests that their plan could actually work. If they successfully create a localized time dilation field, we could be trapped for decades while they develop countermeasures. Admiral Chen smiled, an expression that would have terrified any hegemony observer. Commander, did you really think we came here without studying every possible threat in this region? We've been analyzing architect technology for 20 years. We know exactly what they're planning to do, and we know exactly how to counter it. She activated the fleet's communication system. All ships prepare for activation of reality anchor systems, set for maximum stabilization field, core-centered deployment. What happened next changed the fundamental nature of space-time in the galactic core. The hegemony activated their plan with precision born of desperation. Ancient machines that had slept for millions of years awakened at their commands. Gravitational forces that had been carefully balanced to maintain stellar stability were suddenly redirected into a massive space-time distortion. Reality twisted around Nexus Prime as the time dilation field formed. Stars seemed to slow in their orbits. Light bent into impossible patterns, and the very fabric of space rippled with gravitational waves. For a moment, it appeared that the Resistance had succeeded. The human ships were caught in the expanding field of distorted time, their movements becoming sluggish as temporal effects took hold. Then the humans activated their reality anchor. The device was unlike anything in galactic science. Instead of manipulating existing physical laws, it created a zone where those laws remained constant, regardless of external interference. The massive energy output required to maintain such a field would have drained an entire star system. But the human ships generated it easily. Within the reality anchor's field, time moved normally. The human fleet operated with full efficiency, while the hegemony's own forces were caught in the gravitational chaos they had created. Space-time distortions that should have trapped the invaders instead trapped the defenders. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the communication chaos that filled the core. Admiral Zethkar, you've made a serious tactical error. By destabilizing the gravitational framework of this region, you've created a situation that threatens every inhabited system in the core. We're now forced to take direct action to prevent a disaster. What followed was a display of human engineering capability that redefined the possible. The 12 human ships didn't just resist the gravitational chaos, they began to control it. Working in perfect coordination, they deployed devices that Admiral Chen called stellar manipulation units. These machines reached out across impossible distances to grab hold of the distorted gravitational fields and reshape them according to human specifications. Over the course of 6 days, the humans took control of the entire artificial star system. They didn't destroy the architect technology, they improved it. Ancient machines that had maintained simple stellar stability were rewired to create a defensive network of incredible complexity. Dr. Shinra watched from her observatory on Nexus. Prime as humanity performed engineering feats that challenged her understanding of physics. They're not just controlling gravity, she reported to the remaining council members. They're redesigning the fundamental structure of this star system to serve their purposes. The transformation was breathtaking and terrifying. The humans converted solar mass into construction material, reshaped asteroid belts into defensive platforms, and built a massive space station that dwarfed anything the hegemony had ever constructed. The new human base incorporated Nexus Prime as a minor component, surrounding the ancient station with military installations that could manufacture entire fleets. Defensive systems that operated on principles the hegemony couldn't understand created protective fields around the entire core region. Admiral Zethkar's resistance fleet found themselves outmaneuvered not by superior tactics, but by superior understanding of physics. Human ships appeared and disappeared using technology that seemed to violate causality itself. Their weapons struck targets before they were fired, using what Admiral Chen called temporal recursion targeting. The final battle, if it could be called a battle, lasted less than an hour. The resistance ships were systematically disabled by weapons that reached through time to attack them in the past. No one was killed, but every ship was rendered completely helpless. Admiral Zethkar, Admiral Chen called across the communication channels. Your resistance has been noted and will be considered in future policy decisions. However, the military phase of human expansion in this region is now complete. She paused, and her next words were broadcast to every inhabited system in the galactic core. As of this moment, the core systems are under human protection. Existing governments will continue to operate under human supervision. Cultural and scientific autonomy is guaranteed for all cooperative species. Dr. Shinra received a personal message from Admiral Chen. Doctor, you understand our situation better than most. Would you be willing to serve as an ambassador between human authorities and hegemony populations? Your insights would be valuable in ensuring a smooth transition. 6 months later, Dr. Shinra stood in the observatory of the new human fortress that had been built around Nexus Prime. The view was spectacular. The ancient station now sat at the heart of a military installation that controlled an entire region of space. Ships from dozens of species moved freely through the core systems, but now they moved under human protection. The species that had chosen cooperation found themselves with access to human technology that advanced their civilizations by centuries. Those that had resisted were relocated to carefully maintained reservation worlds where they could preserve their cultures while posing no threat to human expansion. Do you regret your choice? Admiral Chen asked, joining Dr. Shinra at the observation window. I regret that we had to make such a choice at all, Dr. Shinra replied. But I cannot argue with the results. Our species are safer now than they've been in millennia. Admiral Chen nodded. Our expansion has only just begun. 12 more human fleets are currently en route to other galactic regions. Each one carries the same message. Cooperation leads to protection and prosperity. Resistance leads to conquest and control. Dr. Shinra watched human ships prepare for departure to unknown destinations. What happens when you encounter a species that can actually resist you? Admiral Chen's smile was enigmatic. Doctor, we've been preparing for that possibility for over 2 centuries. If such a species exists, we'll learn from them, adapt our strategies, and continue expanding. That's what humans do. We survive, we adapt, and we grow stronger from every challenge. A priority message arrived from Earth, transmitted across impossible distances through human communication networks that operated faster than light itself. Admiral Chen read it briefly and smiled. Galactic core secured, she transmitted back to her homeworld. Proceeding to Phase 2. The age of peaceful galactic civilization had ended. The age of human expansion had begun. And somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, other forces watched humanity's growth with interests of their own. The galaxy was about to learn that humans weren't the apex predators of the universe. They were simply the most recent species to realize that survival required becoming predators themselves. The real test would come when they encountered the things that had been hunting civilizations long before humanity had learned to use fire. But that was a story for another day. For now, the galactic core belonged to humanity, and the stars themselves had been reshaped to serve human purposes. The universe had gained a new superpower, and it would never be the same again.